Iran. She is a member of Indian Archaeological Society and Bihar Purawit Parishad. Ma'am, we are incredibly grateful to have you here today with us.
Welcome to Puhar Baliji Folkbrain Live.
Warm good evening to all of you. My name is Puhar Bale, and today I'm going to talk on the topic of revisiting Dogra Brahminical legacy. This talk is about reconceiving the notions of Brahminical faith in the present region of Jammu, newly formed Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Many of you might have taken pilgrimage to Mata Vaishno Devi Ji or have visited Raghunath Temple in Jammu. But this aspect of Brahminical faith is not known to you, that this region belongs a history of Vedic era. In this particular talk, I'm corroborating historical and archaeological data of this region and showcasing the various aspects of Brahminical faith. Hope you will find it informative and interesting.
या आप कंटिन्यू कीजिए आप अपने सब्जेक्ट पर.
So, as you know that archaeology of religion is a rapidly developing field. Now, how we deal with the religious heritage around the world is often debatable. Relevant beliefs have taken many forms and have generated a diverse archaeological legacy. Attempts have been made to make sense of religious differences in methodological story building and archaeological native production through inter-regional comparison. But for such discussions to exist, it is essential that archaeological studies of each region be showed as some kind of meaningful sequences or explainable processes. So this region found references in the ancient literature, and we have topographical references of that particular region. There are references of sacred mountains, we have with us the Chila Himvant literature of Pali, Neelmamat Puran, Ashtadhyayi, Divya Avdan, and Puranas. The Chila Himavant of Pali literature and the Antargiri of the Neelmat Puran mentions the inner ranges of Himalayas, spreading from Kishtawad to Punch and Rajouri. The Mahabharat and Ashtadhyayi know one more division, Upagri, which signifies the Tarai or Shivalik range, spreading in Jammu and Kangra region. Another well-known mountain, Ushiraka, according to Neelmat Puran, is located in the Darva country, the part of the Jammu region between the Chenab and the Ravi, and may be identified with some hill of Shivalik ranges in Riyasi Udhampur tract. The same mountain has been called Ushir Dhwaja in a Vinay text, Ushir Giri in the Divyavdan, and Ushinara in the Pali literature, and it seems to possess some sacred character which give it a special place in religious text of the old. It may probably have been another name of the mountain containing the shrine of goddess Vishnu. The three-peaked mountain is now known as Trikuta, and may possibly is the Trikuda of the Vedic time. We have the references of different rivers which are sacred in nature in the ancient literature. The Neelmat local Puran of Kashmir and its surrounding territories belonging to 600 to 800 AD refers to Jammu region as part of Madhya Pradesh, which was respected for its rivers like Apaga, Chandrabhaga, Devika, Iravati, Toshi, and Udda and Vishwamitra. Of these, the Devika was considered the most sacred and finds mentioned in ancient literature recorded in Mahabharata and some Puranas like Vishnu Puran, Padma Puran, Kalika Puran, Matsya, Vaman, and Brihat Samhita as well. In the Nilmat Puran, it is regarded that the river Devika is regarded as an incarnation of Uma and locates it to Madra River, Madhya Desh, between the river Ravi and Chenab. At present, a famous tirth known as Purmandal is located on the bank of Devika. Apaga is another river of Jammu region mentioned in Nilmat Puran and earlier works. Panini has also mentioned a few more rivers of this region. Among them is Vidya, identified with being a neighbor of Udaya or Uj river. A group of streams of Jammu region under a common name Toki finds mentioned in ancient literature. Professor Bhullar regards Tosi as the ancient form of river Tohi, Tao or Tavi in Dogri dialect. It is used for several streams of this region which are in the southern slopes of Pir Panjal range and fall in the Chenab or the Jhelum. The two great rivers which form the eastern and western limits of the Jammu region, that is Ravi, Iravati or Purushni, and Chenab, Asikni or Chandrabhaga, find mention in the ancient form of their names in almost all the great literature of old time period down from the Vedas. There is also mention of people, the natives of this region in Rig Veda, Aranak Upanishad, Ras Tarangani, and the book of written by Dr. P.H. Vogel, The Antiquities of Chamba. In this, it is written that the ancient people of this area found mention in ancient literature, and it is written that they worshipped the phallus symbol, and the Rishi Vashisht calls them Shishna Devas. They had at least 100 stones castles to destroy, which Indra, the battle god, was invoked by the Vedic priest. So these are some of the archaeological records. As you can see, we have some. We can trace out the history of the region through inscriptions, folklores, art, architecture, and customs and traditions. The inscriptions of this region which we find is of Akhnur. First, there is reference of god and goddesses in that. Akhnur has yielded some interesting shell inscription of rough, unhewn rebel stones found in the compound of the Kameshwar temple. These are the pilgrim records engraved in southern ornamental characters, the so-called cone shell script of about 6th to 7th century CE. The inscription mention names like Bahuvikyanya, Sukhi Gamti, Mahisho Bhupa Gama, Nahusha and Bala Shravira. I have found these references from Indian Archaeology 1961-62, page number 81. Besides this, there is another inscription that is of worthy of note that I have found found from the northern wall of Kala Dera temple at Babur. It bears defaced and entirely illegible inscription in Sharda script. There is another inscription that we have found is from an ancient document of Trishula or trident inscription found in Shiva temple at Sud Mahadev, engraved on broken shaft of iron Trishul. The language is Sanskrit and characters belong to northwestern variety of 3rd to 4th century CE and probably 7th century CE. It mentions name of rulers such as Vibhu Nag and Ganpati Nag. It is interesting to note that these rulers also figure in another trident inscription at Gopeshwar, district Chamoli of Uttarakhand. A couple of inscribed stone slabs, one in Pali script, lie undeciphered in the Dogra Art Gallery, and large number of Bauli inscriptions are still awaiting decipherment to divulge historical secrets they bear. We have found a number of coins from this region also, and during the earliest part of the reign of Ranjit Dev, he struck coins in the name of Mughal Emperor of Delhi. But later, he struck these coins on his own name. On these later coins, which were in Bikrami era, he had written some of the inscriptions, which is read as that खाना ए रंजीत देव आबद करत, Lakshmi Narayan Dil Shad Karat. One person, Ganesh Das, who coupled this couplet on the coin, and he tried to read it as Lakshmi Narayan Dil Shad Kun, Khana e Ranjit Dev Abad Kun. It conveys the meaning that pleased after doing this, after his work. It is presumed that this type was probably issued when the differences with his eldest son, Brij Raj, was composed. And we have found references of this in two of the books, History of Sikhs and Bibliography of Indian Coins by C.R. Singhal. There is references of folk deities also. There are number of folk deities in the Dogra region, such as Raja Maldev, Kali Veer, and another Devis and Devtas, which are very regional in character. In one of his very famous plays, Baba Jitto, it is written that the Karakas of Baba Jitto actually is the earliest ballad, which can be assigned to the reign of Raja Ajudev, son of famous King Zamir Dev alias Bhim Dev, who was contemporary of Mubarak Shah. The ballad represents the earliest spoken Dogri assignable to the middle of the 15th century. This particular literature strove royal patronage and shows how brave was the king at that time was. Besides this, there are also some stories of Guga and Mandalik, and the same type of Gugaji Maharaj was had found references in Rajasthan also as Gugaji Maharaj in areas of Hanumangarh. In Brijraj Panchasika, there is a mention of King Brij Dev, as well as some of the main stories of Krishna also. In Veer Vilas and Krishna Mahima Stotra, we have found it is written by the Dattu, the Kavi Dattu of that region, who on the request of Badwal chief has written this particular literature. This work of Brijraj Panchasika gives a lot of first-hand description of the Prince Brijraj battles with the Raja Ghamand Chand of Kangra and former's victory over the later. The poet accompanied his expeditions. We have references of god and goddesses in various paintings of that region. Actually, the particular Jammu school or the Dogra school of painting, it was a flourishing center of miniature paintings at that region, and particularly from this area, that whole foothills of the Western Himalayas, Jammu and Punjab hills, starting making miniature paintings as such. We have different centers of those paintings in the Jammu region, which is Basoli, Riasi, Mankot, Ramkot, Punch, and Jammu. Outside the Jammu region, there are another centers of Himalayan Pahari School of Art, such as in Guler, Garhwal, and Kangra. These paintings are quite symbolic in character. Particularly, the principal subjects illustrate seasonal songs such as ragas or musical modes, epics, uh, and and they deal with primarily with Krishna. The Ragmala paintings represent situations in human experience having the same emotional content in which forms the burden of the mode picturized. The Naika, a subject dealing with types of women in love, is equally highlighted in these paintings. We have different books written on that. For example, a book written by M.S. Randhawa. Besides, there are books of Karl Khandelwal. Uh, we have we have Basoli paintings stored in different museums such as National Museum, in Prince of Wales Museum, and Jammu Dogra Art Gallery. You can see in this particular figure the colors are very dark. It is usually painted on the corners by red or dark yellow color. The landscape is treated as decoration. The drawing of tree is very distinctive, highly conventionalized. The Basoli artists have revealed a distinctive, uh, highly conventionalized painting styles, in which the way they in which they style trees, as you can see in this figure, is very amazing. The use of trees is also symbolic. It is a love loan of Naikas towards Krishna. There are many in the architecture. In the architecture, we have sacred architecture that is found in this region as well. There are many natural sacred spaces in Jammu. Some of them said to be Swambhu or self-existing in form. Besides these, temples such as Apshambhu, Roopnagar, and Shiv Khodi in Riyasi district is particularly important. Purmandal and Uttar Bahani is also found references in the historical literature as from this region, particularly the river Devika turns towards north, and the areas like Kashi or Bhagalpur have a very distinctive place in the sacred literature, because here the rivers take a distinctive turn. Besides these natural sacred spaces, there are man-made sacred spaces also. Man-made sacred spaces are temples, sacred spaces in forts, baulis, ghats, and rock castles. As you all know that this is Mata Vaishno Devi ji, and it is said that Mata Vaishno Devi ji appeared naturally in the Pindi form, and there are three other deities as well. Which are known as Lakshmi, Saraswati, and Kali. This is Purmandal on the left side, in between Sud Mahadev, and on the right side it's the Pirkhu. Purmandal and Uttar Bahani, as you can see in the figure on the left side, this is located at a distance of 40 kilometers from Jammu. This is called Chota Kashi or Mini Varanasi. The main complex here is dedicated to Lord Shiva. In aspect of Umapati, it is located on the banks of sacred Devika river, which is mostly flowing underground and thus called Gupta Ganga. About 3 kilometers from Purmandal is Uttar Bahani. As the name suggests, the river Devika here takes a turn and flows northwest, which is rare for rivers in the world. The goddess temple was built by Maharaja Gulab Singh in 1850. Besides this, in middle there is another temple, Sudh Mahadev, that is a highly revered Shiva temple located at a distance of 42 kilometers from Patni Top and 112 kilometers from Jammu. There is a legend that after bathing at a spring, goddess Parvati uh, feel very good, and that's why this particular spring is known as Gauri Kund. Next, on the right side, we have Pir Kho temple. This particular temple is overlooking the Tavi river. Pir Kho temple is closed down at Pakidaki and is another well-known Shiva temple of Jammu. The story goes that Jamvant, the bear god from the famous epic Ramayana, meditated in this temple. Besides this, there is Machel Mata temple, which is of high sacred value in this region. The shrine has no recorded particular history. It is said that goddess appeared in this area in Swambhu form. The actual shrine at Machel village has one pindi there with other three idols of Mahakali, which is known as Mindal, Mahalakshmi, Machel, and Mahasaraswati Chitto Devi particularly. The idol's eyes are closed in Dhyan Mudra. The temple history is enshrined with the conquest of Zorawar Singh Kahlua in 1834. It is said that before taking expedition to Ladakh, Zorawar Singh visited this shrine, and from there he crossed the Suru River or the Indus River. This is Budha Amarnath temple. On the left side, you can see the elevation of the temple, and on the right side, you can see the Swambhu Lingam or the self-existing lingam of that area. Budha Amarnath is actually located in the district of Punch. It is dedicated to Lord Shiva. The temple has the Shivling idol. This unique Shiv temple is located at the foothill, not on the hilltop. There is mythological legends also associated with this temple. Is that it belongs to Rishi Pulustha, the father of King Ravana. This is Harihara temple. This is particular temple is in Bilawar district of Kathua. It has a religious affiliation, as I found from the ASI's websites. It has a religious affiliation to Pars Devtas, Dikpalas. But to me, the name Harihar itself suggests that it must be a temple of a combined form of Shiv and Vishnu. In the voucher or the brochure that I found from ASI, it is written that this particular Shiv temple, according to tradition, is said to have been built by King Bhabruvahan, the son of Arjun. The ancient name of the place found references in many of the ancient literature and is noteworthy to the present area because of its architectural planning, sculptural wealth, and decorative scheme. It is said that this particular temple is Navrathan plan and consists of a square sanctum internally crowned by curvilinear shikhara, the antaral and pillared mandapa. The wall portion has plain molding at the base and top. It has special niches for Parshvadevta on the central Ratha and is studded with Dikpala figures and in pedimented niches on the corners. However, the date is assignable to this particular temple is the 10th century AD. And I found a sculpture of Ganesha totally covered in vermilion from this particular temple. There is another famous group of temple that we found in district Udhampur of this region. It is situated on a small hillock between two rivulets, Brahma, Birhama, and Kirimchi, and is about proximal distance of about 12 kilometers north of Udhampur to Lander Road. The group of temples here locally known as Pandavas temple. The complex consists of 5 temples and 2 small shrines. All the temples are facing east except temple number 3. Temple number 1, 2, 3 and 2 other small shrines are built on a common raised platform, whereas temple number 4 is on separate and higher platform. Temple number see, in this particular slide you can see that it is built on a raised platform, like as such you can see on the right side. The temples on plan consist of Garbhagriha with curvilinear shikhra and elongated antarala and shuknastika decorated with foot shikhra and kalash motif. You can see kalasha placed on the shikhra. Some of the temples have pillared mandapa in front of antaral, which appears to have been added to at a later date. Temple number 2 has intact mandapa, whereas all other temples are survived with the remnants of mandapa. The temples are built either on Triratha or Panch Ratha plan externally and square internally. Inner wall of antaral have trefoil niches and pattern of an inverted lotus flower on the ceiling under a double tiered triangular roof. Temple number 3, you can see down, marks the beginning of architectural activity at Kirimchi. It is the oldest and the smallest structure, consisting of square sanctum with a pyramidal roof and an antaral provided with a wagon vaulted roof. It is followed by temple number 2, more elaborate in plan. On top of it, you see on the left side, it is the oldest and the smallest structure, consisting of squares sanctum and has a wagon vaulted roof. It is more elaborate in plan and higher in elevation. Its mandapa is entered through 3 trifoliate arches. It is presumed that it had a roof in pyramidal shape. 2 shrines on the same platform are survived with only plinth. Temple number 4 marks the beginning of developed architecture. You see the temple number 4 on the top side of on the right hand side, and it is said that from this particular temple number 4 we have the beginning of developed temple architecture at Kirimchi. It shows niches for Parshvadevtas and door designs on the antaral. A chance discovery has revealed that it stands on earlier brick structure datable to the post-Gupta period. It is followed by temple number 5. Its pillars shows remnants of sculptures, most probably of river goddesses. Temple number 1 is most developed and elaborated and ornamented. It depicts large moldings for Ashtadikpalas, Saptamatrikas, etc. So this is the Krimchi group of temples. Now we have Kala Dera temple. The Kala Dera temple is divided into two parts. Kala Dera temple number 1 and Kala Dera temple number 2. It is in district Udhampur. We have in between a road, and on both of the road side there are temples which are named as Kala Dera temple number 1 or Kala Dera temple number 2. It is in the Manwal village of Udhampur. It is said that Kala Dera temple number 1, in which you can see me standing in between, that particular temple is built on a high platform and preceded by mandapas. The entrance is through a flight of steps. On the east, the superstructure is missing. The temple is on high platform, two jambs of the sanctum, the entrance way to the mandapa, and the bases of four columns are still available. The jambs of the entrance to the sanctum have two niches, each with arched top. Between the sanctum and the mandapa is a porch, which also contains two similar pillar bases. The four massive fluted columns have recently been lived on their bases. Externally, the sanctum has both plain molding and geometrical design. The wall of the basement have recently been concerned. The noteworthy architectural members lying at the site are fluted shaft, carved ceiling with inverted lotus flowers, pedestal of images, and pillar bases. Besides two sculptures of dancing Shiva, that is at that time when I visited this place was exhibited in a sculpture shed, and it is said that they belong to about 10th century AD. In this figure on the right side, this is known as Kala Dera temple number 2. This temple is said that it is Saptarathan plan. However, I am unable to find the Saptaratha on plan externally, and it is built on a raised platform approached by a flight of steps on the east. The Shikhra is quite missing at this place, and on the west side is Makramukh Pranal actually, through which the water used to flow into a small rectangular cistern, is carved out of a single block. This particular temple that is visible on the slide is Nand Babor temple. This is another temple we found in the Manwal district, in Manwal village of district Udhampur. It is dedicated to Lord Shiva. It is built on high platform, and it has three sanctums, each preceded by an antaral attached to a common mandapa. The jambs of the antaral and the sanctum are carved with figures of Ganga, Yamuna, Shiva, and Parvati, and that of lintel with an image of Ganesh, flanked by Lakshmi and Parvati. The ceiling of mandapa is rested on a small fluted column decorated with pot and foliage. Motifs externally, it is found that externally this temple is decorated with moldings, ornate pedimented niches and triangles. At the northern corner, a small subsidiary shrine containing an image of Ganesha has been exposed. Several loose architectural members like Amlaka, fluted shafts, etc., are lying at the site. You can see on the left side, you find the Amlaka lying at the site. The temple is assignable to 10th to 11th century AD. This is another temple in the district Udhampur. It is in Thalora village of district Udhampur. This temple is very much of sacred importance. During Navratras, many people came to worship at this temple. The temple is Saptaratha on plan externally. It consists of Garbhagriha and Antaral with a square mandapa. The mandapa is entered through its western wall. The this temple has flight of steps both inside and outside. You can see that there is steps, you can go inside that, and there are also steps inside in which you can go inside the Garbhagriha. However, it is closed at the time when I reached there. It is the mandapa of the Shikhra, the Shikhra of this particular temple is missing, and mandap is left with 4 fluted columns on plain basis. On the western side of mandapa wall, there are 8 niche inside decorated with highly ornamented columns. The porch of the temple also contains 2 fluted columns, which are surmounted by square capital adorned with floral scrolls. The entrance of the Antaral has a lintel. You can see there are these 2 lintels are there, and on in between, which is carved with the figure Ganesh. See there, Ganesh is carved there at the center, while the jambs bear the figures of Ganga and Yamuna on its both sides. It has also some rectangular niches that are foliated in nature, and it provides quite a beautiful design to this particular lintel. Many people say that these are the Dwar Shakhas of the temple. The temple is particularly assignable to 10th to 11th century AD. So in this particular slide, you can see the Bauli of this region. The Bauli is besides serving water storage purpose, also is a source of identification of religious faith. Some of them are quite ornately carved with various god and goddesses. This present slide is of Manwal near district Udhampur. In this particular Bauli, as you can see from left to right, the image of Uma Maheshwar. In the left side, Shesha Shai Vishnu and Brahma. In this carved image of Uma Maheshwar is in it that Uma, which is another name of Parvati, which is consort of Lord Shiva, is depicted sitting pageantly on the lap of Lord Shiva. In between, there is a figure of there is a figure of Shesha Shai Vishnu, in which Brahma is evolving from the navel of Vishnu. This is another image of Brahma. This is the image of Ganesha, and this particular image is of quite importance. And this particular figure, as you can see in this slide, is of Vaikuntha Vishnu. Vaikuntha Vishnu is a four-headed form of Lord Vishnu. In this icon, the Lord Vishnu is represented as a supreme being. He has human head, lion head, boar head, and demonic head also. This concept first appeared in the famous epic of Mahabharata, but the complete iconography was formed in the 5th century text of Panchatantra. This type of figures are very common in this particular area of Vaikuntha Vishnu. We have found this kind of Vaikuntha Vishnu image in the Dogra Art Gallery also, as well as you can find this Vaikuntha Vishnu image from Kashmir in the Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Vastu Sangrahalaya also. You can see in the Gujarat also this kind of sculpture of Vaikuntha Vishnu. This particular figure is not identifiable by me because I'm quite confused in this figure and to which deity it belongs to. This figure belongs to Kartike, which is shown seated on peacock. See, this is another Bauli, figure of another Bauli. The Bauli, as visible in the figure, is from Gudha, Kamlyal, from Ramkot. This Bauli seems to be of early medieval times. As you can see, memorial hero stones are placed near the Bauli. These hero stones are erected in memory of a hero or a brave person who martyred his life. This is an archetypal kind of hero stone and has sculptures in 3 panels. The left is in a depiction of a heroic deed. The middle one shows heavenly apsaras taking the hero to the heaven, and the last one depicts the hero on the mount of Kailasha, or the abode of God. In this particular figure, apsaras are taking apsaras that you can see on the apsaras are taking the warrior or the brave person to heaven. This is very beautiful, and in this the hero is shown seated on horse, and the apsara is shown having 2 dasis also. This is a different kind of chariot in which he carried this hero along with him. Okay, this is another Bauli we found from that same region also of Gudha Kalyal of Ramkot. It has various sacrificial hero stones attached to its wall. You can see there are various hero stones attached to it. So here you can find that these particular Baulis are not only built for religious purposes, but also lauding the braveries of the people or the brave persons who had died, and they erected memorial stones in its memories also on near to these Baulis, which are later turned up into folk deities. The most prominent of which we know is Lord or folk deity of Kaliveer. This beautiful stepped Bauli is from Papnashini. This particular is known as Papnashini Bauli, and it is found from Sudh Mahadev. And it is found near the Sudh Mahadev temple. It has beautifully decorated religious figures around it, and we have carved images of Ganesha, Virgan, bull animal figurine also. It has a beautiful Makarmukh Pranal also here. You can see it has. There is also known as circle of life in a symbolic form is depicted on these baulis also. Hmm. This bauli is located behind Sukrala Mata temple. It had some hero stones in it, and those hero stones are placed in all those three phases. You can see there one in which he is fighting with the person in which he has died, in which he has been taken along with the Apsaras. Besides, the forts also comprises the sacred shrines, uh, and this is one of the famous fort of the Jammu region. Actually, Bahu Fort is a historic fort in the city of Jammu. It is constructed on the banks of river Tavi. It is said that it was constructed by Raja Bahu Lochan, who built it around 3000 years ago. The fort has a religious place, and with its in its present, it has a temple dedicated to Hindu goddess Kali, known as locally known as Bave Wali Mata. So this is the image of Bave Wali Mata, and this image is of the outer side of the external portion of the Bahu Fort or the wall of Bahu Fort. Besides this particular Bahu Fort, which is in the Jammu city, we have another forts and fortresses also that have shrines inside, like the Jasrota Fort, Riasi Fort. It has Kalivir temple and Durga temple respectively. So these are some of the rock carvings of that region. This particular figure of rock carvings we found is from the Haridwar temple of Sudh Mahadev. The, in this slide image on the left, that this particular image is not identifiable by me. However, it seems to me that this is hero stone. This might be a hero stone, and the image on the right side is of Hanumanji having Sanjeevani in one of his hands. So this is another rock carvings. You can see that this is a near image, and this is a whole landscape image of that a particular rock carving. This rock sculpture is from Bilawar, Kathua region. In this image, Hanumanji is carved on stone, and as you can see that people are worshipping and having faith on that particular stone, as it is, and it is also revered as a natural deity to them. From this particular lecture, I want to conclude that we usually try to find out religious history or the religious history of a region from a single source. But there are many sources through which we try to find out religious history of a region. Usually, people can see a religious history or a religious history from one type of notion, but there are various dimensions of the religious history of that region, and we should take over all these aspects in context to it. So, in the end, I want to conclude that besides tangible aspects, we should also include intangible aspects of archaeology for drawing out any conclusions or drawing out any kind of stereotyping or image of that region. So, thank you very much for that. Uh, I am really thankful to Dr. Kailash Kumar Mishra sir. Actually, I want to share something with you all that when Dr. Kailash Kumar Mishra, the founding head of Folk Brain, at the time I was a bit skeptic. But today, I am thankful to Dr. Kailash Kumar Mishra sir of Folk Brain, who unknowingly helped me to revive my past and all those golden memories of my native region. I am thankful to Animesh Kumar Parashar sir, who not only permitted me but also motivated me. I am thankful to Sanjeev Kumar Singh sir, who are indeed a mentor for me. I am thankful to Dr. V.K. Sonpal sir, who took me along during exploration of that region and helped me in knowing the history of that area in detail. I am thankful to Tariq Latif Kamboli, who is not only an iconography enthusiast but also helped me in identification of cultures in detail. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Fuhar Bali, for your extraordinary presentation. It was simply superb, all in capital, bold, and italic. Everybody liked your presentation. It was so heuristic, self-explained, meaningful. Every word was, carefully chosen. You were explaining the extraordinary, cultural heritage that Jammu had. We always talk, whenever you talk about Jammu, I had a talk with you also. We always talk, whenever we talk about Jammu, we are Raghunath Temple and that Vaishno Devi Temple. You have gone beyond. And you have not only gone beyond, you have explained everything. Few curiosities, few questions came. Like Professor Anjani Kumar was asking while you were presenting your PPT, he was saying that if you can pinpointedly say that which specific area about era of this particular structure belong to, this will make a clear picture in the mindset of spectators. You are getting my point?
Okay, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So that was the one question. Second question came from Dr. Sanjeev Kumar sir, for me, my elder brother. He says that if at the end of the presentation, if you can briefly explain the differences between the Shiva temples and also the iconography found in Jammu region and the Kashmir region, the difference in the architecture, in the iconography, in the era of creation, those things, if you can very briefly explain, if you can, that would be wonderful. I tell you to address these two simple but very, very, very meaningful questions.
Okay, sir. So, while dealing with my first question, I want to tell that many of these temples belong to 10th to 11th century AD of that region, and some of them belong to the Gupta period. And these are the local Gupta rulers who ruled over there. And the second question, the second question by Dr. Sanjeev Kumar Singh sir, who is also a mentor to me, he said that the basic differences between the temples in the Jammu region and the Kashmir region. So I want to tell you that Kashmir region has a different architectural style and Jammu region has different architectural style. Jammu region is highly influenced by the Eastern school of architecture. We have seen that these temples have influence of Kalinga school of architecture or known as Odishan school of architecture. While as in the Kashmir school of architecture, they don't have any kind of influences of Eastern school of architecture. I hope I tried to explain.
Okay. You have carefully taken the questions and you have answered them. These were the observations from your elders. And I must again congratulate you for this wonderful presentation. I have Geeta Pandita and she is full praises of you. And she is concerned about the Hindu architecture of, Jammu and Kashmir. And she says that even the syllabus, these things, the Hindu architectures are not mentioned because, the scholars are biased probably, and we are in the process of initiating the people to rewrite the history honestly. We don't say that you write the history of Hindu or history of this thing and this thing. Geeta Pandita's question I am putting that Mukesh has done. She says, sir, Hindu kings don't have place in Indian history syllabus. Temples are very far. There must be change in history syllabus. All local as well as national heroes must get chapter, not one para in history books. She is very much concerned. One may like her, fanatic, like her concern as a fanatic Hindu, but if you think seriously, you will find a meaningful curiosity of a scholar or a person who belongs to that area, and she understand that this part of culture has not been seriously taken care by the scholars while creating the books of syllabus for the schools and colleges and universities. So this is, I think, not your cup of tea. This is for us to promote and put it before the government, and the scholar and academic body will do this. And Dr. Anjani Kumar Jha is again asking, are these referred to in Kalhans of Raj Tarangini, ma'am? You have answer for this?
There is mention of some of them in Raj Tarangini as well. But many of these are mentioned in the ancient Purana literature. However, the Raj Tarangini consists of mainly the Rhine of Kashmir, deals with Rhine of Kashmir region. But we have Rajdarshini also of Jammu region, in which a detailed history of the Jammu region is written. Besides Vanshavalis promoted by the various Dogra rulers.
So thank you. You have completed everything in complete 1 hour time frame. And that is called the real balanced scholarship. And I again thank you for this wonderful magnetic presentation. Anand Barun says, very, very worthy discussions. Really, it was worthy discussions. It still continues. And tomorrow, again, we are going to invite a very, very dynamic lady, Sneha Prakash. And Sneha Prakash is going to talk about the gender discourse. She says, why gender discourse and how gender discourse? Who is going to create gender discourse? What are the things to be taken? And how the women are going to take it? So these are the few dynamic things. With this, we are going to come to you tomorrow. You were very fortunate because, Padma Shri Usha Kiran Khan was watching your program from the beginning to the end, and she has a message for you. बहुत बढ़िया तरीका है, क्रमबद्ध सा, wonderful, very extraordinary way of presenting it, very in a very, very sequential manner. That is the remark you have received from Professor Padma Shri Usha Kiran Khan. So thank you everybody. We had Sanjeev Bhai, we have Dr. Dalip Kumar, our mentor, Dr. Anjani Kumar, Usha ji was there. And thank you, Mukesh, for presenting this wonderful thing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. God bless you. Be in touch. Maybe in future, we can again invite you to deliver some meaningful, at least my emotional hammering, pressure, academic, commitment, compel you to come out with such a wonderful, presentation. So if this is the outcome of my hearing, I will keep on hammering on you. Thank you. God bless you.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आप दोनों मेहमानों का, डॉक्टर कैलाश कुमार मिश्रा जी और फुहार बाली जी, आपको भी काफी दिल से धन्यवाद है जो आपने इतना अच्छा से जो जम्मू की जो सभ्यता संस्कृति है, खास करके मंदिरों को लेकर आपने इतने अच्छा से समझाया और हमारे दर्शकों को भी काफी पसंद आया। तो हमारा ये है कि हम आगे फ्यूचर में भी शायद आपको एक और नेक्स्ट लेक्चर के लिए हम लोग बुलाएंगे। तो तब तक के लिए इस कार्यक्रम में धन्यवाद। कल हम लोग फिर मिलते हैं 6 बजे। स्टे ट्यून, फोक ब्रेन। थैंक यू।